the broom handle. Awesome.
So be careful not to hit the screen, but that's a problem.
Okay. Nice.
So everyone, this is Monica Schuster. This is Mona's daughter. And Monica has been doing bus tours up in the Klondike for how many years?
Since 1916. I mean, 2016.
That's a long time.
I'm only a century off.
That's what happens when you're in the history world.
Right? It's historical, right?
So a little while ago, I was needing a backup program. So she did this program for us up at the ranch, and we had, I don't know, 20 or 30 people come.
11.
11.
Wow.
She's just feeding off me.
Yeah, felt like that. It was wonderful, and we did have it filmed. So that was my backup program, and then my program for May couldn't come, so she's our backup program in real life. So it was just going to be on YouTube, but now she's in real life, and we have added some more photos to it. So thank you, Monica.
Thank you.
Right, well, thank you for coming today. Okay, you guys have all heard of the Klondike Gold Rush, right?
Yes.
Yep.
Is this too loud?
No.
It is fine. Up until I went up there, up until that time, this was all I knew of the Klondike Gold Rush. When somebody said Klondike Gold Rush, this is what I pictured. I didn't know anything about it. I just pictured people with boxes on their back climbing up a mountain. Well, since then, I've learned a few other things. And what I'm going to talk about today are just the logistics of people, why this picture is there. To talk about anything else, there's so much. We'd be here for a week. So I'm just going to talk about the logistics, and that's what's happening today. All right, so I put this picture in, and it's kind of what this is, but I think you can see the screen better than that. So just kind of wanted to put this in so that you kind of knew how things worked up there as far as what countries are where. And, you know, here's the inside passage here. This is where cruise ships go up, and some of you might have taken a cruise ship or driven up there. So here's the inside passage right here. Juneau, and then Skagway at that little waterway right there where the red line begins. Right where that little red line ends with the water, that's where Skagway is. Skagway means home of the north wind. The wind is so brutal. Anytime, even in the summer, any given day, it's 20 to 30 miles an hour. You've felt the wind here in Wyoming. We've had it the last couple of days alone, right? Everyday occurrence there. It's insane how much wind. And then this is British Columbia here, and there's a little doohickey of that. The red is the road, the highway, the South Klondike Highway goes up there. Whitehorse is the capital of the Yukon Territory. Now, obviously, this is all Canada. These are all provinces down here. These are territories, Yukon Territory, Northwest Territory, Nunavut Territory, and then, of course, Alaska. Now, you guys all know Puerto Rico is a territory of the U.S., right? These are the territories of Canada. Same thing, but they just happen to be attached. So the government is slightly different. The provinces act more like a state. They have their own governments, and then overruled by the federal government, you know, pretty much. Same thing, these territories have their own local government too, but they act more like the Indian reservations here. They have their local native government, but it's overruled by the federal government. So it's just slightly different, but it's all Canada. And then of course we have Alaska here, and this pink right here is still Alaska. So anyway, that's how things work together. From Sheridan, Wyoming right there, to up here drive to Skagway, 2,100 miles. I've made that trip 11 times since 2016. If you ever take the road trip, it's awesome. Do it, get a chance. Anyway, so 2,100 miles, and that, remember that number, because I'll come back to it. But anyway, the capital of Yukon is Whitehorse. The thing with the gold rush, it's not like any other gold rush. They get off the boat here, and then they take the Yukon River all the way up into the gold fields right there. 600 miles. They had to walk 600 miles just to get to the gold. It's not like any other gold rush, like if you found gold up in the hills, you could just walk there maybe a day or two to get there, but that's why the boxes, and many times, but I'll get into all that. But anyway, this is an area approximately about the third of the United States. Alaska is slightly less than half. Anyway, so that is that. Just wanted to give you an idea of how things worked up there. Yukon, Whitehorse is the capital. Here's Skagway right there. All right, so just to give you a little history, the whole history about the gold rush starts about 10 years prior to the gold rush. The gold rush started in 1897 to 1899. Pretty much. It started waning towards 1899, but pretty much 2 years. 1886, there was a economic downfall in the United States, mainly because of, one, they wanted the gold standard to come back in, so they started making less currency to be out there for people to buy things with. And then also, with the Industrial Revolution, they were able to make so much product, way more product than there were actually people to buy that product. So nobody was buying product because there wasn't that many people. So the plants were shutting down because nobody was buying the product, they had enough. So things like that. So economic downfall, those were the two main things. And then also, there's a guy named William Moore. He, well, first of all, from this area here down into Skagway, there was a trail called the Chilkoot Trail. The natives have used that for hundreds of years to get from the interior down into the coastal regions, because there's a big mountain. Once it goes up from Skagway, there's 15 miles is the pass, and it goes up from there and then it drops down. But that's the interior. To get from the interior to the coastal, there's the Chilkoot Pass. And they've used that for hundreds of years for the interior to go fishing down. The natives on the interior, they went fishing down in the coast. The coastal Indians would go up that same trail to the interior to go hunting. So they would be constantly using that. 1886, William Moore, he founded Mooresville, ended up being Skagway. So if I use Mooresville or Skagway, they're interchangeable. The name changed later. He heard of a trail called White Pass through it's a different pass. There's a big mountain range between the two. He wanted to go find that pass. So he found that pass down into Skagway, which is a deep water bay. So he found that, and then he got down there and he thought, I really like this. If someday, somewhere, somebody's going to discover gold up in the interior, and so this would be an easy way to get up here. And so he built a dock, a port, built a, small, that's where he raised his family. There was a small town in there. And that's how Skagway became, or Mooresville. That's how people knew to come there in the very beginning when they first heard about the gold. So let me go back. That is the quickest way in, even though you had to hike 600 miles. When they found out about the gold eventually, from Skagway to Dawson City, that literally was the easiest way. Otherwise, you had to take a trail along the coast and the mountain, because this is all mountain. The whole of British Columbia is one big mountain range, right? If anybody's ever been up there. Or you could go from Edmonton on foot up and over, because at that point, there was nothing up there. Right now, we only have one road, the Alaska Highway. This is, you know, a couple hundred years ago, or 100 years ago. My math is, my centuries are getting off. But there was nothing up there. Everything was up there either some kind of animal or on foot. So even though they had to hike 600 miles to get to the gold, it was still the easiest way up there. There was an easier way along the Yukon River up here to the coast of Alaska. It's 2,000 miles by river, but you would have had to have been rich on the gold in order to take that trip to get to the gold. It's very, very expensive. So that was the easiest, but you had to have a lot of money to be able to do that. So they're walking here, they're walking there, walking across from Alaska to that point right there. So it really was the easiest. So he started Mooresville, let everybody know that, hey, if you want an easy way into the interior, for whatever reason, gold or whatever, hunting, come to Mooresville. We got you. So anyway, all right. So that was 10 years prior. He also had this guy named Brackett build a dirt road 15 miles up the pass to White Pass from Skagway to the border right there to British Columbia. Or actually, so this is 15 miles right here to British Columbia, and then about another 25 to the Yukon border. Anyway, he had a guy named Brackett build a kind of a very primitive road that you could take horses and a small wagon up there. And so there was a trail, a small road that gets up from Skagway up into the pass. Fast forward 10 years, 1896, four young people were out in the middle of nowhere in Yukon in this region here. They call it the Klondike area because we got the Klondike River meeting the Yukon River here. And the whole region is called the Klondike, and that's why they call it the Klondike Gold Rush. So they were hanging out in the Klondike. George Carmack was the white guy, the only white guy. The other three were natives. He was married to Katie, who was Skookum Jim's cousin or sister, and Dawson Charlie is their cousin. So Dawson Charlie, Skookum Jim, Katie Carmack, and George Carmack. George was the only white guy. They were out hanging out in the Yukon, whatever people do in 1896, hunting, fishing, panning for gold, whatever. They came across this guy named Robert Henderson, and they said, great, Henderson was panning for gold with his wife. They were camping out there. Henderson didn't like natives. He was very racial, and so he did tell them about the gold, because at that point in time, there's hardly anybody up there. So there was a gentleman's rule that if you found gold, you told everybody you came across, because there's nobody up there at that point. Except for the natives and various trappers, or, you know, there were enough people up there. So Robert Henderson told the four about the gold, but George Carmack, he said, hey, if we found gold, do you mind if we lay a claim next to yours? And Henderson, not liking the natives, he goes, well, you can, but your other three can't. I was like, oh, okay. Gold was gold. So they went down the creek a couple days. They didn't find anything, so they decided to go back upstream and see if they could find any gold. On the way through, they went through the Henderson's camp again, and they asked if they could borrow tobacco. He wouldn't let them because of the natives, and so that really put a damper on their relationship. So they went upstream, couldn't find anything. They went over the ridge to the next drainage system, the next valley, and that's where they found the gold. Skookum Jim hunted a moose. He was skinning it, went to the creek, washed the blood off his hands. He looked down and found the gold nugget the size of my thumb in the water. They looked around for about 4 days, found so much gold. I read a story once where they looked like they peeled the moss off the rock, and it looked like somebody wrapped the rock in gold foil. I mean, there's so much gold up there. Placer gold, which is the gold dust and nuggets, and the wrapping of the I don't know what they call that, gold foil, I guess. Anyway, so after about 4 days, they decided we should go into 43 Mile City, and lay the claims. So that's what they did. Now, I bring Robert Henderson up into this because it's a great little story, nice moral. Had the Hendersons treated them well, they would have walked back over the ridge and said, hey, but they didn't treat them well. So they just went straight into 40 Mile City, lay their claims. By the time the Hendersons found out about the gold, everything in that area was cleaned out already by the people. Because as they went into, the four went into 43 Mile City, they had told everybody they met, of course. And there wasn't that many people, but there was enough. And a claim is 500 feet by 2,000 feet. And depending on what side of the river that you actually make the claim, you could, anyway. So 1896 is when they found the gold. Everybody started coming in, working the gold. Then winter set in, and you guys know what solid freezing thing stuff is here. I mean, it's even twice as bad up there. Everything is locked in. Nobody in, nobody out. They're working their gold all winter. They pile it up. The following spring, 2 ships were able to sail up the coast of Alaska into the Yukon River, sail it across Alaska into Dawson City, where the gold fields were, right there. Load up all the gold. Millions of dollars worth of gold, even by today's standards. Loaded up 2 ships, sailed down July 14th, 1897. 1 ship went into San Francisco, the Excelsior. In July 17th, the Portland sailed into Seattle. Everybody went crazy. Within a day or 2. Everybody was buying steamship tickets to go up to get the gold. There were so many people buying tickets to go up there. They were putting into commission ships that have been out of commission forever. And so hundreds of people lost their lives just getting up there because these boats shouldn't have been on the water, let alone the open ocean water. So, so when they finally get up there, the very first ships, I mean, we're talking like the mayor of Seattle literally jumped ship, so to speak, and got on a ship and went up there. Half the police force of Seattle went in. These people have no idea how to live in the wilderness, let alone this extreme environment up there. So they get up there, and this is present day Skagway. I'm on top of a mountain there. So this is Skagway right here. This is present day. This road goes, there's a dirt road that goes all the way around here, these peninsulas, and this is Dyea. This is where the Chilkoot Trail, that native trail that I talked about, it comes along between those 2 mountains there. White Pass comes out through these 2 mountains. So this is the very beginning of that mountain range that I'll show you later. So this is it. It's just one long mountain range. Anyway, so present day Skagway, surrounded by 2 mountains, 4 blocks wide, 22 blocks long. Massive metropolis that it is. This is later after people started coming in. This right here is the present day dock. It goes along until it hits the water right there, and 2 cruise ships are able to launch there. None of these are here anymore. There's the Skagway River that comes along there. 2 docks, 1 dock there, 2 ships can go in. The ferry landing is there now. The Broadway dock is there, and then the ore dock is over here. And they all come out this way instead of diagonal like that. But that's, that doesn't give a date on it, does it? sometime 1897 or 8. That's what it looks like. After a while, there's no tree in sight. This is what it looks like after just a few months up there. From a few buildings to from about 10 people to 10,000 people within a matter of a couple weeks, and then it never stopped. At any given moment, there was 30,000 people in this area. That's what it looks like now at the end of ships. At the end of the day, most ships are gone by 7, some are earlier. You can see 2 cruise ships back there. But most people are either at home after all their tours are done, or they're in the bars. You walk down the street, it's desolate, and then you walk by an open doorway, and you're like, oh man, it's loud. It's kind of funny. Anyway. Okay. Once those first ships got into Skagway, one, nobody bothered to tell them they had to walk 600 miles for the gold. And 2, nobody bothered to tell them everything was claimed out a year earlier. They had no access to the gold when they got there. So, and then when the very first ships got into Skagway, or Mooresville at the time, they literally got off the ship and started looking on the ground for the gold. So people had to tell them to walk up, start walking. So they walked up. The original pass was the White Pass Trail, because there was that minor primitive road. And so that came out of this area here. Now there's a train there. They started building it in May of 1898. But this is 1897. So the green is the White Pass Trail. Obviously the black dotted is the railway. The black line is the road right now. This is the Chilkoot Pass that came in later. So they started walking. This is in the very beginning. There was a road, and since there was a road up there, there was the Northwest Mounted Police. These days it's the Royal Canadian Mounted Police, the RCMP. At that point it was the Northwest Mounted Police, and they had a cabin right at the top of the pass, right there. There'll be pictures of that. But anyway, they get to the pass, and all these people are going through, and they had no idea. They got nothing. They have no idea how to live. They had a few supplies with them, but basically nothing what they're going to live and what they're going into, especially for the winter. And in the wintertime, it's -50 on the pass any given moment of any given day. That's not even including the 30 to 50 mile an hour winds that are up there. Sometimes 70 miles an hour or 100 miles an hour wind. They get to the pass, and the Mounties are looking at these people going, oh my God, they're gonna die. So they enacted a rule that nobody could get into Canada without 1 year's rations of food, which equated to about 2,000 pounds. Like, how does one man carry 2,000 pounds? Okay, so how does one do that? If you had animals, if you had money to get a horse or oxen or whatever, then you could pile as much as you can on that horse, and then you would beat that horse up the pass, and when it finally collapsed of exhaustion and starvation, because you wanted your food on there, not theirs, you kicked them over the side and you went down to get more, if you had the money. If you did not have the money for animals, what you would do, you put 50 pounds on your back. I'm just going to use 50 for math's sake. Everybody carried their own weight, but you put 50 pounds on their back and you walked 15 miles to the border, and then you dropped it, and then you walked back down 15 miles to grab another 50 pounds, and then you walked 15 miles back up to the border, and then you set it down, because once you got to the Canadian side, everything was good. Nobody would steal anything. The Canadian Mounties, took care of their own. I mean, they took care of everything up there. On the US side, anything goes. In fact, many people couldn't start walking because they had their stuff stolen. I mean, we had gangs of people stealing. There's so much. It's the dark side and then the light side. So they get up to the top, they drop it, walk back down. Takes them 3 to 4 months to get their 2,000 pounds. If you're walking, horse is slightly less. If you're walking, it takes you 3 to 4 months to get all of your 2,000 pounds, just 15 miles up the pass, 40 trips. They have walked by that point 600 miles to go 15 with 2,000 pounds of their gear. Of course, they've eaten some of it, so it might only be 59 or 559 trips or 599, whatever. Anyway, so they get up there, drop their pass. Knock that over. Okay. Okay, I'm going to backtrack just a bit. So, this is Skagway again. This is Long Bay. This is one of my favorite ones to kayak in. Here's Dyea. When people started realizing that, okay, horses, if you had an animal, you go on White Pass. Pretty soon there were so many people on the White Pass Trail, they had to open up the Chilkoot Trail, the native trail, because not everybody could fit. It got pretty busy. In fact, I read a story once where if you tripped and fell out of line, it would take you a half a day to have enough room to squeeze in there, because nobody would let you in. Because by this point, you're hiking and hiking, their whole mentality is, I gotta get to the gold. 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 And that's their mentality. It's exhausting. Anyway, so the thing with, see where it kind of shadows out right there? Or the lighter? This is all a tidal flat. So, and there's a tiny river coming out on this side, but this is that's how far the tide goes out. And if you went out even on high tide, you'd probably not be over my height. Anyway, so right there is where it starts deep water again. So the hard part about this is just, it's not as steep, but you can take animals. The thing with Dyea, the hard part about that is the ships could only go to this point. It's deep water and then shallow. So they had to dump all the gear, all their miners' gear, on little flat boats so that they could take it up into, as far as whatever the tide is at. There are 20 to 25 foot tides in Alaska. So it will raise, twice this roof, at least, any given day. And it moves fast. I've been able to film it. It moves so fast. It's incredible how fast it moves in. Anyway, so many people lost their goods, or at least partial goods, because they couldn't get it off. These flatboats would come up here as far as they could, drop their stuff on the dry land, and then all the miners would hustle 2,000 pounds trying to get it up in a high enough where the tides wouldn't get it all wet. So bags of flour don't work well with water, let alone salt water. So anyway, that was the problem with Dyea. That's the town of Dyea. It used to be a gold rush town. Now it's just a tidal flat. But anyway, there's that. And if anybody, if I just kind of glossed over something, if you have any questions, feel free to pop up. This is on the Chilkoot Pass. Isn't that crazy? The Golden Stairway. Actually, it's not the Golden Stairway. The Golden Stairway, there was a guy, people started realizing after they were hiking many miles, they're not going to get rich on the gold. They started realizing this. So they started making money off the miners. They called it mining the miners. And so one of the ways is they called it Golden Staircase. Some guy cut, because in the wintertime this is solid ice because it's cold. Minus 50 plus the wind chill, it just shears. It's solid ice up there. And so he cut stairs into the ice next to the trail, and he charged 50 cents a stair. So Because on solid ice like that, you know, you take one step and you slide back 5 steps, you know. So anyway, this is on the Chilkoot Trail. And it's a funny story, they got these pictures. There's a couple guys, one is in Helm, I think. The other one, I can't remember, Peterson, I think is, I'm not sure what his name is, but he got these pictures by taking, you can't take animals here because it's too steep and treacherous. They kept, if you had animals, you stayed on the White Pass. But he trained a team of mountain goats to go up there. And then in the wintertime, back then they had to use ammonium nitrate or whatever the liquid was that they needed to take photographs. They had to keep it from freezing. So not only did he have a team of mountain goats, but he had a sled with a fire on it 24/7 to keep the liquid from freezing. So that's how all these pictures got here. And this basically is what we just saw, that there. This is the Peterson Pass. It's lower, but it's way longer. So there are very few people that are going this direction. Most of them went up this here, and they call this area the Scales because this is where the mounted police are on the Chilkoot side. And now later you see these, the first pictures didn't have any of these wires or anything like that on it. Here you see a structure right there. That is, later, one of the things that people made money on is some guy brought timber up to the top of there. He knew he wasn't going to get rich on the gold, so he did it in another way. He brought the timbers up, brought pulleys and rope, and so he would charge these miners many, many dollars to pull their gear up without them having to take, trips back and forth. So millionaires made off the miners. That's on the White Pass Trail. Look at that. The first winter of 97, 99, 98, one of those, they had 70 feet of snow up at White Pass. That's 7 school buses high. That's a lot. And when it's minus 50 any given day, and then the added wind chill of that, sometimes up to 100 miles an hour up there. And it feels like it too. So yeah, that's the White Pass. This is what they had to walk through in the summertime. So not easy. Right here, right before that bridge is no longer usable, as you see, it's kind of got a big hole in it. But this is called Dead Horse Gulch right here. The primitive road went down in that valley. The train tracks they follow the same direction as the original trail, but they had to go slightly different just because to keep the grade so that the train can actually go uphill. So anyway, Dead Horse Gulch is right here, this valley here. And there's not a lot of snow right there because I think that's mid-June. So the snow's almost gone. That's how much snow's up there. All right, this is my friend Rue. She lives in Whitehorse. She's my let's go do crazy stuff together friends. You want to go climb a mountain? Okay. We're at the top of the mountain. That obelisk is the Canadian border with the U.S. About every 100 yards across the mountaintop there's an obelisk. Once the guys get to the top of the pass, it takes them 3 to 4 months of absolute hell to get there. They're just beat down. Humanity's gone, their mentality's gone. They're just en route. And they get up to the top of the pass and they think they've made it because it's been 3 or 4 months of absolute, hell getting up there. And they think, oh, thank God. They get to the mountain station and they're, oh, and then they climb over that pass. This is what they see. This is called Tormented Valley. And the mounting station I'll show you next is right down here. That train tracks right there, they literally are right over here. This is Summit Lake. And this Summit Lake, it doesn't look too wide, right? That's 250 feet deep. That's the beauty of glaciers. I mean, everything up there is glacier carved. But anyway, the mountain cabin that I'll show you was right down here, right next to the train tracks there. The top of the lake is right here. That mountain cabin is right at the top of the lake. Anyway, so they see this, they call it this tormented valley because it takes them 3 months to get up there, 3 or 4, and they think they made it. And then they get to this point and they realize they've only come 15 miles. They have 585 more miles to go. Some people committed suicide, they couldn't deal. Some people said, okay, no, I'm done. Sold their stuff, went back. Some people went on, obviously, and they went on that side of the river. Like you can kind of see the railroad tracks right along there. That's where the original trail was. Now, another few pictures, you'll see me on the other side. But that trailhead, here's the road here. That trailhead at the top of the pass, it goes up over there. But see this mountain range here? That's the one that started down way by Skagway. I told you that's the beginning of the mountain range, one big long mountain. That's it right there. The miners got down through here and went through those 2 mountains right there and then went west that way. So that mountain range there is the same as this mountain range here. It starts here, it goes all the way up to Log Cabin right here. And this is the White Pass Trail. And there's that long lake right there, Summit Lake. And then here's the Chilkoot Trail up here. So these next pictures that I'm going to show you, the trailhead to go over is right here at the border. That's the border of British Columbia. And we take the trailhead and we hiked right here and the picture you got next is coming, I'm standing right there. It's a horrible view, isn't it? I left this in so to prove you that it was actually there. I didn't Photoshop it, I promise. So right down at the bottom there, this might show it a little better. Anyway, the Chilkoot Trail is literally right down in that valley right there. So you can literally hike down cross over the mountain range, down into the Chilkoot from the White Pass Trail, the pass. So yeah, Chilkoot. So that mountain range there is that mountain range there, and we crossed it like right over here. Anyway, Log Cabin, oops, right there was a boomtown during the gold rush. You could resupply anything or just hang out with people. And then, what do we got next year? Oh yeah, here's the mountie cabin. We got the United States flag, the Alaska flag, British Columbia flag, Yukon flag, and the Canadian flag. And this next one I took just for scale. That's me and my dog Jimmy. It's a pretty small cabin. I kept that in just for scale. And when Ruth was standing by that obelisk, it was somewhere up on top there. And the train tracks, pretty much I'm almost standing on the tracks when I took this picture.
So how did the tracks get there? Where did they come from and how did they get those in there?
Started in Skagway, and then they built it along, and they started in May 1898. And so they just built it to help the gold rush so these people wouldn't have to go through all of that. Unfortunately, they actually finished the tracks pretty much after the gold rush was finished. People started realizing it.
I wondered about that.
Yeah, they pretty much finished it, but it only took them, it's solid granite, and I'll show you a picture of that later. Solid granite, it only took them 9 months to go 15 miles
Hmm.
out of solid rock. It's pretty amazing.
Today, if you take that train from Skagway to that cabin,
Yeah, and that's the short one, the short trip. Have you done it? It's kind of cool, isn't it? Yeah, so this is mid-June. The other ones are in August. They're earlier years, but this was last year. That's mid-June. That's how much snow is up there. This is mid-June. In fact, Summit Lake didn't thaw out till mid-June. Okay. Once they get to the pass, okay, the border is where we just were, is right there. Once they get to Log Cabin, we're around that mountain range there, between those two big mountains. They could get to Bennett City, at the beginning of Bennett Lake. Bennett Lake is 66 miles long. Now, if you were off the Chilkoot Trail, you would come along here, and then the first lake you would hit would be Lindeman Lake, and then you'd hit Lindeman City. There you could kind of rest, regroup, resupply, whatever. From this point on, this is 40 miles from Skagway to Bennett, is 40 miles. From Lindeman City to Dyea is 33 miles. It's taken them 5-6 months to get there. Once you get to this point, you could actually conceivably go the rest of the 560 miles by water. But there's a catch. You had to build a boat first. And then you had to paddle about 200 miles through these glacier-fed, cold, very deep lakes with the wind blowing 20, 30, 40 miles an hour every single day, with white caps at least a foot. It's insane. Most people didn't know how to build a boat. So they were basically building sieves, or they would lash logs together. That's what some of them did. They literally just lashed logs together. Can you imagine paddling a little log raft a couple 100 miles in the wind? Sometimes, like on Bennett Lake, some of that would be downwind, but still, it's still extremely dangerous. People lose their lives all the time. Lindeman Lake is about 15 miles long. Bennett Lake is 66. They would go into Nares Lake, which is about 20 miles long. Go into the windy arm of the Tagish Lake. Come along here, and that's about 40 miles. And then we go into Marsh Lake, which is about 50, and then you could hit the Yukon River and float all the way down into the gold fields. Okay, yeah. That's Bennett. Back then. Notice the trees. Oh, wait, there are none. Building boats, cooking, heating, tent or survival. Now, this is obviously sometime in the summer-ish. Hey, you all know her. I think this is 2018, the first time she came up. She drove up with me. That was the first time she was here. This is the very, very tippy top of Bennett Lake, the 66-mile long lake. That is right there at Carcross. In the springtime, it freezes, and the water is all the way back. I think the edge of the actual water, you can see it barely right there. And that's a huge, massive sandbar there. This is like end of April, I believe. It's usually when I go up there. So it's all sand, and then as the summer melts and all the snow melt and everything, the water is actually up to the deck there. It comes in over the summer. But anyway, at the end, in the spring of 1898, 30,000 people were camped on this beach waiting for spring breakup with their boats. And the Mounties were walking amongst all these people, making sure that they're behaving. The Mounties took their job seriously. They were good. They started looking at these boats, and again, they're thinking, oh my God, these people are gonna die. So they started making the people put numbers on each boat with their name that belongs to them. So when the boat washes up on shore, they know who to contact for the family. Anyway, so at the end of the winter there, 87 and 80, or 97, 98, in the spring, when everybody's gathered around, all the people with their boats and spring breakup, they had a list of over 7,124 boats. And they're all trying to get on the water at the same time, trying to get down to the river to be the first at the gold fields. The ones that are already claimed out and already, no access to. Anyway, 7,124 boats, all vying to be the first down to the river. Isn't that crazy? That's another view of it. Another rough view. All right, so once they get through all the lake systems, through Marsh Lake and then into the Yukon River, this is actually about a couple miles out of Whitehorse. This is called Miles Canyon, and it's pretty calm right there, right? But about a mile from this direction, the canyon narrows even more. And so what does that do with water? There's a whitewater there. Oh, many people tried to get through those rapids and couldn't. They lost their lives. So the Mounties again, oh my God, everybody stop. Not on our watch. So they made everybody test that you and your vessel could get through those rapids. And if you could not, you're walking around. It's about a mile, dragging your boat and your supplies. So, and then you could go to, float all the way down into Dawson City. This is the SS Klondike. After a while, people started realizing, okay, yeah, I'm not going to get rich on the gold, and so they started making money. This is one of the ways they brought in the old paddle boats, like the ones that go up the Mississippi River. You can't really see the paddle on that one. This is one of the bigger ones. They started bringing in boats like this and a bunch of other types too, smaller ones, to get through the lake systems so that these people didn't have enough, didn't have to build boats. And then of course they could charge lots of money for a ride. So they did. Plus there's no trees. I read stories where people literally, by the time they get to Bennett, there's no trees. They had to walk 5 miles inland just to find a tree. And then of course they had to build a boat and then drag it back 5 miles to the lake. So your life is looking pretty darn good right now, doesn't it? That's the SS Too Shy. It had a fire, so all that's left was the framework. This is at Carcross, the very northern edge of Bennett Lake where that beach was. Okay, so talk about the trains now. Started building a train in May 1898. Notice the granite, solid granite. For them to go 15 miles in 9 months, that's pretty darn good because they're doing this. Now the trail is down below. So here's where I talk about, I'm going to go back into the horses a little bit. Just notice that just the solid granite where they had to do. There was a lot of people didn't end up going up the trail because they got their stuff stolen. They got up part of the way and said, no more. So they quit, they go back. And so then of course they have to get out of Skagway. A lot of them didn't have the money. They spent everything they owned. And because of that economic hardship or downfall that started 10 years earlier, a lot of these people, that's why a lot of these people were here. That's why it was as big as it was, because they just wanted to feed their families. Because people were starving for 10 years, you know, they were out of work. So that's why the Klondike Gold Rush was so wild. And you see all those people on the docks. They were there immediately. Let's go get gold. And I'm sure there was no greed involved at all. But anyway, so they ended up working on the railroad, many of these people. The women ended up, well, working all times of the day. But there were 76 brothels in Skagway at that time. So that's where women started working. Men went to work on the railroad. At any given moment, there was 20 to 30,000 people working on this railroad. So I mentioned the horses. Dead Horse Gulch. Over 3,000 animals at the bottom of this ravine. The trail, the actual trail went below a lot of the times because the guy couldn't build, you know, a road through solid granite with his when he built that original dirt road, primitive road. So he went below in the scrabble of the mountains as it, you know, started eroding and stuff. So that's where the actual trail was. The railroad was up higher. So the White Pass Trail and then the railroad. So these people were watching the atrocities that people did to these animals. And to say that they beat them and then starved them, that's a really nice thing to say after some of the things that I've read and heard that happened to these animals, because these guys are going, gotta get to the gold, gotta get to the gold. And so the things, they're gone mentally. Their humanity is gone. And so they treated these animals not nicely. So they're watching, some of these people on the railroad have committed those crimes to these animals, but these guys are watching them down below every single day. And they're watching all of those horrible, horrible things that these men are doing to these animals. This is the railroad part of it. There's solid rock, they call it Inspiration Point. And it's this huge, massive thing that they can't go around, so they have to go through. And this is the very beginning. The more they started blasting, the more half of the upper echelon of the railroad, the White Pass and Yukon Railroad, decided that they couldn't do it. And the other half of the upper echelons went, yeah, we can do it, we can do it. So they kept pushing. And they finally did it. And there's the train going up. That's that bridge that no longer is used because there's a big hole in it, but this is an old picture. This is only partway through. Now you can see why some of them didn't think they could do it. Now, this is Inspiration, the monument there. What happens with this, and I'm going to cry on this one, so just go with it. After they finally made that final blast through the mountain, and they made it through, and they were almost to the pass. They still had a little bit to go, but that was the worst part right there. They finally blasted through that last bit of rock, and they could see daylight in that tunnel. 30,000 people stopped for 3 days. They didn't pick up a shovel, axe, nothing. And yes, in celebration, they actually did it. Woo-woo. But most of all, after watching Andor doing these horrible atrocities to these animals, they sat for 3 days. And they knew that not one more animal will be harmed in the name of gold. So they sat for 3 days, just letting it all go, letting it all trickle through after watching this for months on end, every day. And now they knew that not one more animal would be harmed. And it says, monument erected on the line of White Pass and Yukon Railway, inscribed thus, the dead are speaking. In memory of us 3,000 pack animals that laid our bones on these awful hills during the gold rush of 1897 to 1898, we now thank those listening souls that heard our groans across the stretch of years. We waited, but not in vain. Oh, there she is again. So this is a lookout above Skagway. This is what present-day Skagway. There's no ships in there now, but the Lynn Canal in the back there, they call it canal, but nobody knows why, because sounds like it's man-made, right? It's actually the longest and deepest fjord in North America. It's like 1,500 feet deep and 89 miles long, all the way down into Juneau. But in fact, if you're in Juneau, those white mountains in the background there, you're looking at the southern end of those same mountains from Juneau. So anyway, all right. Hey, Mom. Before, actually, let's go to this. They say that 100,000 people started on this journey from either trail. I think there are more because of all the people that came across, from all different directions, from all over. But that's just me. They're saying 100,000 people started, 30,000 actually made it up there. Some people were able to buy claims from other people who were just tired of working it. They stole some claims. They started working for people at pennies on the dollar, of course, or even fewer pennies way back when. A penny on a dollar is probably a lot of money back then. But so anyway, and then they heard, other gold rushes start, like in Nome and other places. So some of them just left. I was going to say something about that. Oh, how in the winter? Here's how they did gold. This is a good one to make you feel like, okay, I got it good. So how they got the gold in the wintertime? It's frozen solid. Everything is literally like solid. They would build a fire, and if you worked for somebody, you would be go chopping firewood, and sometimes the firewood is 5 miles up. So you would chop wood. Build a fire, melt the snow, melt the ground, dig it out, build another fire, melt it down, dig it out, build another fire till you got a big tunnel down there. And then you would see where the veins are, and then you would do the same thing sideways. So, and then the Mounties, if they found you did something bad, what they would do, their detention or how they would make you work it off is they cut firewood. It's a lot of firewood.
Yeah.
When it's minus 50 with the wind chill of minus 100 or whatever, and they had to keep warm, so that's a lot of firewood. It took most people. Well, the gold rush lasted about 2 years. Started waning after towards the second year, the end of the second year. 87, or 97, 99, 3,000 animals, 600 miles, 2,000 total. If they started from White Pass to Bennett, they walked about 1,600 miles to go 40. Took them 1,600 miles to go 40 miles. Drive from here to there is 2,100, so they've done a good 2/3 of it already, and they just went 40 miles. Isn't that crazy? So, all right. Yep, 565 miles. Took most people 9 months to a year to get there, not including any waiting time in the winter at Bennett or Lindeman City. So, yeah, actual traveling time is about 9 months to a year before they can get up there. So, and that's the logistics. There's so many other things involved with that gold rush, but it's enough just to talk about the logistics. I mean, it's insane. So, did anybody have any questions? That's pretty much it as far as I'm concerned, but if anybody have any questions?
Did the governments know that those sites are already claimed and that the gold is basically gone already? Why
Yep,
didn't they warn these people before they even left the States?
they wanted the money. They wanted money.
How many people died up there? Do you know?
Oh gosh, countless. I don't think they even could begin to tell. I mean, from everything from, one of the ways people made money was to sell rotten horse meat. Hey, you want dinner? $5 a plate. Rotten horse meat. They get sick and, die or whatever, dysentery, whatever. Many of the people lost their lives in an avalanche off the Chilkoot Trail. So there's so many people that people probably never heard from again. Lost in a boat on the way up there. Nobody has ever been able to come up with even an answer close to that, or close to an answer to that. Yep.
A lot of the land, my father was one of the people that had land up there, claims up there and everything.
Oh, really?
And, of course, he wanted my husband and I to go up. No way. Anyway, it was interesting, all the hoops you had to jump through, to claim your land and everything. But anyway, we did not go up and we did not claim our land, and that went back to the government.
Yeah, I bet.
I just thought
To the
I would
natives.
add that for information.
Yeah, it's all native land up there. You can't buy property. You have to, yeah. And they're still working. There's like 3 major mines up there working. I think 2 of them are commercial and one's a private, but there's still a lot of gold up there.
Yeah. My dad always said we could have been millionaires if you'd have gone up there and looked.
Sometimes the cost is a little too much. Anybody else?
I imagine mail would have been a problem.
Oh, yeah. In fact, Carcross, the town of Carcross at the beach where Mom was standing there, used to be called Caribou Crossing. But the post office came in and said, too long. Actually, I think, well, that's one of the reasons, but they shortened it to Carcross. But there were many Caribou crossings, there were like 12 Caribou crossings, so the mail kept going to different ones. And so finally they had to change that, so. Anybody else? Yeah.
Could you go on with the story beyond this? Because there were people from right here in Sheridan. Dr. Frackleton was one of the people that went up there. And his story is in his book.
Oh, really? Oh, nice. Yeah, there's so many. There's so many stories. It's just.
It tells more of the people
Right.
than the logistics, but that was very interesting.
Yeah, thanks. I love logistics. Other people get involved with different people, the personal side of it. I love the logistics, so my tours always have more of the logistics, like what I just told you.
Jack London was another one that was up there.
Yeah, yeah.
I went on an Alaskan cruise probably about 10 years ago, and we went to Skagway and took a train up, and it showed where all the men started hiking up.
Yeah.
And then when we got to the top, then they turned the seats around and we went down.
Yep. They now have right below where Ruth was standing at that obelisk, they, right past where the cabin was, they now have built a loop. So it just goes around the loop and you don't have to switch the seats anymore. That's good. I think, a cruise line bought the train, and when they did that, they built that. What cruise line was that? Norwegian, I think. Anyone else?
I just thought your presentation was really good. You were talking about the masses of people who died, and of course, back then, they had no way of really tracking, especially in that part of the country, and especially in the newer state areas. And you were talking about how all those ships started out from, say, San Francisco, et cetera, they weren't even water-worthy, ocean-worthy. And there's no record probably, at all of the thousands that could have been lost that way, so it's like,
Yeah.
amazing.
We have no, I mean, as far as we know, the 100,000 people are only the ones that started on the trails. There could be, another 100,000 at the bottom of the ocean or coming across the country, because you have to get across the country just to get to a boat, and then you take another week or week and a half on a steamship, and then you start your journey. Crazy. Yes.
How'd they get those big boats that far up there?
The Yukon River.
But how did they get the boat from the ocean to that river?
Well, it's out to, let's see, this is a good picture of it. See, they're coming up the ocean. They go around Alaska and into the Yukon River. I think that's it right there. Comes in like that. So they can just go up and in. Yeah. That's the one that was, you have to be rich to be able to do, to sail all the way in.
Yeah.
You had to get rich on the gold before you could be able to get to the gold. Anyone else?
Well, I will tell you about the story that was on the puzzle. There's going to be a movie of these guys. They're from Bonanza, Wyoming, which is over the mountain near Hyattville. They decided they were going to take up 80 horses, right? And they were going to sell the horses when they got there. There were 3 guys, and how much were they going to sell each horse? I should know this. Like $100 a horse when they got there. So that was going to be their goal. When they started from Bonanza, started trailing the horses. And they start fighting halfway across Canada. 2 of them decided to go up on a train and make the other guy herd them all the way up. So they're starting down here in Wyoming, right about where this red line is, and they get about halfway up and they fight, and one guy has to then trail the horses up to Skagway, and then the other 2 take the train. They end up at Dawson City waiting for him to show up, and he ends up 1 horse and 1 mule. They all die.
That's how hard of a journey. The building of the Alaska Highway is a whole nother ballgame. And that's involved. I mean, the train during World War II, the U.S. Army built the Alaska Highway because they needed all their tanks and trucks to come, they wanted to build a military base near Anchorage. But they couldn't bring all their trucks and tanks and all the military stuff in by boat because they didn't want to be torpedoed. So they had to come over land. There was no overland. They had to build one. So the U.S. Army built the Alaska Highway in conjunction with the Canadian government. So they built it, coming down here all the way into Tok, or actually it ends up near Fairbanks and Delta Junction, but it comes all the way down into northern Dawson Creek. But yeah, they came over land with mountain ranges that are, makes the Bighorns look like the valley. And muskeg, the swamps through there, it's horrible. And of course, you know, the bugs carry you away. They're big. So anyway, yeah, horses, I'm surprised I even got one, you know.
Exactly, and when that movie comes out, I'll let you all know about it, because it's a local high school kid that graduated from high school in Sheridan with Cami, and he's producing and putting it all together, so I'll let you know when that comes out.
They started out with 900 horses and 1 mule, just so everybody knows. I have mules.
The mule made it all the way. Yeah.
But that railroad in Skagway, how they built that, the Alaska Highway, is they brought in, the US Army confiscated the railroad, basically. They shipped 30,000 tons a day on that railroad from Skagway to Whitehorse. So that, and then they distribute all the materials for that road along and they took there were planes then, like mail routes and stuff, and they followed, there were many people said, hey, we should go this way, the other people go that, you know, we should go that way, and finally they went along the trail of the airports that were so-called airports, the dirt tracks that were called the runways, along the way, because it would make it easier to get stuff to, you know, material to make the road. So that's the road that they took, but yeah, they shipped 30 tons a day, and you know how nowadays it's a normal thing, you don't even think about it? The White Pass Railroad actually was the instigator of the transportation system of road to ship to railway to road. You know, they guided 2 ships from wherever it was, the product. They shipped it up to Skagway. They took a train, took it to Whitehorse. They put it all on the truck, and the truck took the product to wherever. I mean, this is any kind of product, not just this is after the railroad. But the White Pass Railroad was the first thing that started that whole transportation system. And now everybody uses it. But it's like, it's a whole, you know, ship to boat to railroad to ship or to truck again. I mean, it's pretty amazing.
You have to admire the people that organized all that stuff, put it together to make it work.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. Anyway.
Thank you.
Thanks for having me.
All right.
Thank you.